correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Roll for initiative.
Hello, folks in Gamer Nation out there listening to the show. This is the Roll for Initiative podcast, issue number 9. I am your host, DM Vince, along with DM Jason and DM Nick. How are you guys doing this week?
I'm doing well. This is Nick here. How are you all doing?
Hey, everybody. It's Jason. Doing great.
Wow, that was a little quiet there.
That's how we are.
That's how we roll this week. This week we got a great show for you, and hopefully we'll satisfy all your first edition craving needs. That's what we're here for, and that's what we're here to do. We try. And let's jump right into Sage Advice.
Greetings, old one. We seek your advice.
Excellent. Sit by the fire, we shall talk.
Welcome to Sage Advice.
So, reaching in the mailbag, we have something from GM Gleno from the D20 Radio forums.
Hello, GM Gleno.
Hey, Gleno.
He says he's doing fine. No, I'm kidding. He has a question. His player in this game used a magic sword to hit a green slime.
Yes.
The being of metal, the slime should dissolve, or is it immune to what kind of saving throw would we apply to do this? How will we save the sword, he wants to know.
Well, I was looking around for answers on this. The first place I looked was for the green slime itself, and obviously it just doesn't answer it straight up in the monster manual, and I couldn't find a ecology of the green slime article from Dragon. There might be one, but I didn't find one in time. But
I don't recall one myself.
Yeah,
I thought it was a pretty straightforward thing, though. What I just went ahead and did is went to the saving throw matrix for magical items on page 80 of the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Right.
And I would absolutely give it a saving throw. I think the idea of making a metal sword immune to green slime just because it's magical would be going over the top. But I agree that there ought to be some kind of save involved. I don't know how you guys interpret this.
I agree. I looked that up on the same matrix, Jason. Sick minds think alike here. And from the nature of the creature of the green slime and how it reacts, I was like a save versus acid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's even pretty close here. They even say a considerable volume of strong acid, black dragon, or giant slug spittle. I mean, that seems to fall right into the idea of it.
So you get your base +2 save for being a magic item in itself, plus any additional bonuses that the item gets. So it's like if it's a +1 sword, you're going to have +3 to save on that versus acid.
Yeah, and already you've got a really good save. I mean, you've already got a really good save. I think
it's like 7. Yeah, 7.
Yeah. So at that point, if it's if it's a +3 sword, you're basically fine from the green slime, which you ought to be by the time you reach the level that you have a +3 sword.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like according to the Matrix, I think it says any magical item is like just base +2. It could have been like, maybe a cloak got green slime on it, for example. It still gets a +2 to it, say, because it's magical.
Yeah. Now, the way that I would play it, though, is I wouldn't stop with one save. Personally, I would make the player stop and try to get the green slime off of the sword or off of the armor or the cloak, because if they didn't, I'd call it a continuing save, personally. Not because I have a really game mechanic reason behind it, but because I want to see the player waste a bunch of their time in the middle of the combat trying to figure out how to get the slime off without getting it on other things.
Well, it's only logical, that if the slime's on there, it's going to stay on there until it's taken off. So
I'm with you on that one too.
Yeah, burn it off, guys. Burn it off. Not there. Not there.
Not there.
Oh, that reminds me of a great story that we had with the green slime one time when we were playing with my wonderful group way back in the day. The green slime landed on the player's helmet. And what happened was they were trying to get off the character's head, so they put a bucket of water on his head to try to do it, which I don't know why, but It made it look. It was just stupid. It was a comical thing. And then what happened was we were getting so annoyed the fact that one of the other players just took a lantern and smashed it over his head while it was lit, and just lit the character totally on fire. One way of getting rid of it, right?
He's washing his head at us.
Yeah, really. Okay, well, if you have any questions, you can email us at rfistaff@gmail.com for your questions. We'll answer them on the air, or you can head over to the website, rfipodcast.com, and we'll head into the Creature Feature Theater.
Suddenly, your torch goes out. You fumble around the darkness to relight your torch. When you do, you look up and see the Creature Feature Theater.
So what do we have this week, Jason?
We have the Rust Monster, a creature that I think most people who are really into the legends and lore of how some of the things were created in AD&D probably already know the story that Gary Gygax modeled the Rust Monster on a little plastic toy that he found, I think, in his son's bucket of toys.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I am pretty sure that I actually had the same toy when I was a kid, because I remember noticing it in here and going,
That looks familiar.
that looks really familiar.
I think so too. Yeah, I think I
yeah.
had that same one too.
But yeah, so Rust Monsters are, a diabolically great invention, because if you're going into a dungeon all kitted out, with all of your armor and everything, I'm ready for anything. They can't get through this. That's a monster that specifically feeds on what I'm ready for them with.
Well, this is a perfect follow-up to last week's monster. What we did was the Disenchanter. Like Nick said, team the two of these guys up, and that's a fearsome combination.
Yeah,
I did mention that because I'm a devious DM, and that's what I do.
Nice.
So what kind of a situation would you come up with for the two of them to be hanging out?
Well, as we talked about last
Because the
week,
Disenchanter is going to be going after the stuff. If the Rust Monster gets to the magical shield first, the Disenchanter is going to be all pissed off because he ate his food.
True.
Well, maybe because the Disenchanter is a more intelligent creature, has average intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It could, I would just think maybe it would somehow maybe train the Rust Monster in a certain fashion, or that's
cool
where I was
if
kind of thinking about it.
If a Disenchanter had Rust Monster minions.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, you put the two of them together, there'd be a great combination if you want to be a devious DM like DM Nick here. So.
Yeah, this would be one for the druids.
Yes.
That finally the
kind of
druid has a reason to be.
I also kind of picture him. I don't know why he just seems like one of those. The Rust Monster is kind of like one of those dungeon cleaning kind of monsters for some reason. It always kind of struck me as that, like with a gelatinous cube or something like that. They kind of fill that role.
I like it. There's sort of an ecology to the dungeon then. They have to have... Everything has its purpose.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too.
This monster
that actually makes sense for a Disenchanter too then, because if in an ecological system, if everything finds its niche, well, in a world where magical items are always getting dropped around, that's its niche.
Yeah, maybe.
Yep, yeah, it's your magical control. I noticed this monster was one of the ones that got lost in the later editions. I don't really hear many people talking about it anymore. So
yeah,
it's kind of got pushed.
Well, it's kind of once you leave the idea of a human-sized world and you start getting into superheroes, suddenly it doesn't really work as well if all they're doing is taking down your metal items.
The poor Rust Monster got left out.
I know. It's like when we used to play, it was like it's a Rust Monster. Oh, crap. What are we going to do? Nowadays, you don't even hear anything about a Rust Monster.
Yeah,
I know.
It's probably got 14 different feats and automatic skills that you don't even have to think about that would just take
Are we going to go down this road?
No.
No, we're not going down that road.
Okay. No. Just wondering.
Sorry, I was playing my 4E game last night, and so I'm in that mindset a little bit. I'll stop.
Okay.
Yes, this is the first edition podcast where we bring you only first edition good joyness into your homes, not fourth edition.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have any questions or comments about the Rust Monster and how to use it, you can look it up in the Monster Manual, because we're not going to go over it in entirety, because we know everyone listening to this podcast knows something something about the Rust monster already. So
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah.
Gotta have it.
we just wanted to discuss it really briefly and tell you different ways you can use it in your game. So tell us how you use it in your game, rfistaff@gmail.com, and we'll head over to playing tips.
Welcome to Playing Tips.
So playing tips, I've entitled this one "No Healer, No Problem" this week.
Are you going to have some Bob Marley playing in the background?
I'm going to try.
No problem, man.
Yeah, no problem. So I came into a recent problem in my group. My group hates playing healers, as I spoke about last week, Nick. We discussed that. So we have no healers in my group.
No problem.
It's insane. Wait, that's the next segment.
Yeah. Quiet. So what do you do in a situation like that? Jason, what's your advice to my group that has no healers other than they're screwed?
Yeah, actually, I don't think they're screwed at all because it depends how high level you are. I mean, if it's a lower level party, I think they're not as screwed as if it's a higher level party.
Okay.
I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the reason is at lower levels, your clerics and druids and paladins don't really have that much that they can do on their own anyway. You know, maybe you've got a couple of cure light wounds, but beyond that, what a party really relies on at that level is all of the magic items and potions and those kind of things that come into play. A good low-level party should be searching like crazy for scrolls of healing and spells on, potions and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. If they're relying on the cleric to heal them, they're going to be spending a lot of time going back to town and waiting a week or two to heal up before going to the next room in the dungeon.
Right, and that's where you get into the thing where the cleric is just reduced to the level of medic,
Yeah, and I don't think the cleric was ever really meant to be a medic.
No, but it's a lot of times, and I've seen in my experience, that's where, the cleric gets, thrown into.
Well, what does your party do, Vince?
Well, the party that I'm running the campaign for, they are lost completely without healers. They keep going back to town because the monk in the group is a dope and does stupid stuff. Like, I'll put stuff out just to see if he'll touch it, and he'll touch it. I set up this.
Does this person listen to the podcast? You just called them stupid.
No, he doesn't actually.
I think he called him a dope.
Yeah, dope. I think I called him. But he does it all the time. And I have one player in the group that knows what he's doing, and another player that's pretty much well educated with D&D, and then we got this dope.
Oh, okay.
So they have no cleric, no healer. They don't even have healing potions. They went on the last dungeon crawl that I had with no healing potions. I'm like, dudes, you don't go buy supplies? What's the matter with you guys?
Well, what they really did is they brought you a present. They brought you a TPK.
Yeah. I'm going to throw the question to you guys. If you were in my group playing, and the group consisted of a thief, a fighter, and a monk, how would you prepare for, say, a dungeon crawl without a healer in your group? I'll throw it to you, Nick, first.
Oh, sure. Some of the things I would probably do is make sure we had plenty of potions of healing or extra healing. If we can somehow acquire some of those. Mm-hmm. If I was on the player side, maybe some scrolls with some healing spells, or like if we have characters like paladins in the group or druids that are high enough level, they could maybe compensate for the loss of healing and some other abilities like the turning ability of a cleric.
Yeah,
but, or ultimately, maybe you can hire one if you have enough money.
That's exactly where I would have gone, because it's something that you see happen a lot more with older players, people who've been around since early days of the game, is they are more comfortable with taking hirelings and NPCs into things. And that's where I would actually go, is say, look, if nobody wants to play a character with any healing abilities, and you do need to have some kind of a medic, so to speak, then hire one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it comes down to the point that when it comes to hire them, they won't even bother doing, no, we don't want to waste the gold. And I said, well, then you guys are going to die.
Well, then they die.
Yes.
I mean, at some point, you got to make sure that they care enough about their characters that they're upset when they die, so that you can gently nudge them in the right direction.
Well, last session, that's pretty much what happened, because the monk wound up killing himself. So they finally learned their lesson, because he was just, well.
Well,
Karate chopped
this is
himself
like
in the
that.
face.
What?
Karate chopped himself in the face.
Yeah, let's say that. Yeah.
This is like that movie that you recommended to me, Vince.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You did watch that movie, didn't you?
Hilarious. What was it called? Darkness Rising?
Gamers, The Darkness Rising.
Where was it the monk that kept dying? I forgot.
It was the Bard. He died like 40-something times.
Yeah,
Yes, awesome
it was
movie.
hilarious. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Great
So-
bunch of guys, too.
Yeah. So, but with the hirelings, I mean, yeah, you need to kill them if they're not doing things right. And but the cool thing about the hirelings is that it gives you as the DM an opportunity to kind of show them how a cleric is really role played.
Right.
Huh.
So, they say, well, we're going to go into town and we're going to hire a cleric to help us out. Well, that cleric's not coming along just for the money, usually. He's also going to be a cleric from a different religion who sees it as a great opportunity to proselytize for his obviously superior god or goddess.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. You hit the nail on the head there.
So that's how we'd handle it in the group. Sounds like a good idea. Wow.
You're going to have a lot of fun. You're basically going to be bothering them with Jehovah's Witnesses all day long.
Oh, I can just picture it now.
And I'm really sorry if there's a Jehovah's Witness listening to the show that is upset with me for stereotyping that, and that's not what I meant, but you know what I mean.
Okay, well, tell us how you handle things in your campaign. How, if you don't have a healer, or if you do have a healer, let us know. rfistaff@gmail.com.
Stickler's Spotlight.
So, Stickler Spotlight. Nick, what do we got on the table this week?
Insanity. And how the insanity rules are in the DMG and how they're handled in D&D.
Well, you wrote insanity rules in the show notes, and I interpreted that as insanity rules.
That's how it was meant.
No, this is AD&D, not Call of Cthulhu.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's great. I mean, this section right here is one of the most overlooked, underappreciated, and completely fun parts of the entire Dungeon Master's Guide.
Fun.
Really?
You've got 20 different kinds of insanity laid out for you, and I play by the book, but there's a line in here that I ignore, and that's where Gary Gygax said you should just go ahead and take over the player's character and just run it for them.
Yeah, I didn't agree with that line
way.
either. Yeah, that's putting right in my notes. No way. Let them play it out. Let the players.
I actually have different ways of approaching it depending on which insanity we're talking about. So let me give you a couple of examples. Some of them I would just say, okay, I'm going to take the player character aside and tell him. So, for example, kleptomania.
Okay.
He wants to steal. Just go ahead, take him aside, and say, listen, you have kleptomania. Play it up. Have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Chances are the player will be happy to do it if you pull him aside because it's like, ooh, something special for me.
Oh, totally. A pathological liar. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about this is in my Hackmaster game, part of the character creation, when you create your character, you get these quirks and flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these types of things are, like kleptomania, for example, that's actually part of your character if you roll it up.
Cool.
So
Cool, yeah.
the idea of, and I'm on agreement with Jason as well. It's like I'm on the ideas that depending on the insanity, how it is in AD&D, they should be able to role play it out. Like you said, pull them aside or explain, okay, your character is now megalomaniac, and this is here's an idea how you might want to play it out here. Here's how it is in AD&D. So maybe give you some ideas how you might want to role play that. So yeah, I'd let the players kind of do it.
You just actually hit on the next one I was going to go to, which was the places where I wouldn't pull them aside, tell them, and here's what I would do. So for megalomania or the next one, delusional insanity,
Right.
just to make sure that these aren't, like it says in the book, these aren't coming straight out of the whatever the American Psychological Handbook. They're
right
for game terms. But so the megalomania is where the insane character is absolutely convinced that they're the best at everything.
Right.
Wisest, strongest, fastest, and delusional insanity, where they're convinced that they're a famous figure like a monarch or a demigod or something. So, what I would actually do is before the game, like on a totally different day, so it can really sink in. I'd say, listen, something amazing happened after the last thing. You know that magic item that you found? It has actually transformed you. You now have all 18 stats.
You are now a god.
Amazing. Yeah, I would just tell the player, don't even let them roleplay it. Actually convince the actual player that this has happened.
Oh, sneaky. Ooh, I like that.
You just say you have actually you've been melded into the role of King Rama the Ninth, and you and him now share all these things. You have inherited all of his treasure. You now are him.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, and then all the other players are going to be like, "What are you doing, dude?" And you're like, "But you can't tell the others because they don't know."
Oh, I thought I was an evil DM.
Nice.
I like you.
This reminds me of another great story. Like everyone loves little stories we hear and there from campaigns. But when playing with the great Joe DM, Jason, and he had killed one of our. He was always willing to kill anybody, but killed one of our characters. He came back and he's like, "Well, I'm going to change it up a little different. I'm going to go with saying when you came back to life, you're pulled up in insanity." I guess he was into that mood that week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the depressed cleric came about.
Oh, boy.
The depressed cleric was like this.
Emo cleric?
Yeah, even worse. It was like this. 5th level, like, I'm dying, heal me. Why bother? You're
God.
just going to get hit again. So he had the person had to play the character like that the whole entire time. Until we figured out a way.
Paranoid android.
I was just going to say, Marvin is my favorite character of all time from all books. Oh, that's great.
Well, aren't you gonna resurrect him? Why bother? He's just gonna die again anyway. Why should I bother praying? The God's just gonna cut me off.
Here I am, power from a god the size of 1,000 planets, and they ask me to heal the fighter.
It's funny that you mentioned about the insanity rules, how they're presented is. I get the impression that you really want to play it kind of loose, know. It really, and in the way that Jason suggested is, having the players more or less role play the insanities. You kind of leave it up to the player how they're going to do it, and I like how they even said these are just guidelines. This is
he gave you 20 different ones so that you'd have something to go off of. It doesn't mean that you can't come in with a different thing. Or
even add some.
Yeah.
Look at all the different phobias.
There's some of them in here that I actually would take away control from the character, though, because suicidal mania, I think at that point you kind of have to say, I'm sorry, this is what's happening.
Give it to the paladin.
I can't think... Nice. Give it to the paladin. But, there's one in here, we don't have to go through each one in detail, but there's one of them, hebephrenia. Which... Okay. I don't know. Somehow I overlooked it when I was a kid when I was playing the game because later on I was actually I was in this sort of experimental art rock band thing at one point in my life. After I'd stopped playing D&D back then and before I'd been playing it now, and had independently discovered this type of insanity called hebephrenia, and we did a whole thing all around it because hebephrenia actually manifests itself in this kind of amazing hallucinations and madness that if you spend some time looking it up, you could have a lot of fun with that one. It's the most obscure of the madnesses in here and kind of the most fun one. Because the person, they don't just have hallucinations, but they find everything unbelievably funny. They become sometimes they become pranksters, sometimes they become depressed. It's amazing what happens under it.
Dude,
so
you just described 4 days at Origins without any sleep.
Oh, wow.
So that's when you give it to them.
Nice. Now, I noticed that this was lost in translation also with the later editions. I can't find insanity rules with a lot of later editions either.
Well, it's because it requires role-playing.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's because it requires role-playing.
Yeah, no one knows how to role-play is what you're saying?
No, I'm just being a jerk.
Okay, break it up, break it up, you two.
Well, I noticed that when I was playing in a different, edition one other night, which we will not talk about, there was no insanity rules because I wanted to actually have a little flavor in my character after he died because of someone stupid in the group. But I was like, well, I'll look at insanity rules. He's like, all right, cool. So we looked it up. We couldn't find it. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll grab my first edition book. It has a lot of rules in there for it. And he was like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it adds a lot of flavor to a player that where you stumble across this sort of thing, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it really makes some interesting role-playing situations.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are good for just short term, but some of them are good long term, like your Hackmaster game, to just turn it into a personality trait.
Well, yeah, and that's how it is in that particular game. When you create the character, you have the quirks and flaws section, and you roll. You could cherry pick, or you can roll randomly and see what you get as far as quirks and flaws. Some of them are mental, some of them are physical, but some of the mental ones, are like jerk or all the different types of phobias. So that actually is a part of your player character in that particular game. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
With a lot of these, what you could do with your players is, once your player knows that they've got monomania or pathological liar or whichever one you've chosen for them, and they've figured out how they want to role play it, you could set up sort of a secret sign, right? Because the whole point is not to tell the whole group, hey, this player is a pathological liar.
Right.
So you set up some little sign that only, between you and them, so that whenever you feel like it's time for it to kick in, you just, do the tug on your ear or whatever, and just kind of watch for how long it takes for everybody to pick up on the fact that this has happened.
Well, how about
that's good?
You always make up your own. Like, say, I just thought of a fun one: sleep anxiety.
Nice.
Which one?
Sleep anxiety? Your player,
fear of going to sleep.
Yeah, fear of not being able to fall asleep and then staying up all night worrying about going to sleep. What happens with your character then?
It's cool because you can start putting in you can come up with some specific penalties to have happen. Eventually your constitution temporarily starts to wane.
Yeah.
Or your dexterity doesn't do so well. Or your intelligence might stay high, but your wisdom's
is going to drop.
Temporarily impaired. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Oh, man, that is a real good one.
So I have a question for you guys on one last one on the insanity rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Given what I was saying before about trying to kind of force the players into playing it even though they don't know what's going on, so making them really think that they've got the powers of a god or something. How about paranoia?
That's another game. No,
no, that's a great game. But
yes.
How about actually making the player actually paranoid?
I do that anyway in my games.
Well, I was doing delusional
my players
stuff.
fear everything.
Yeah.
So
I fear everything, yeah. I was doing delusional things.
You could
last
actually
time,
have one of your players, be constantly getting these secret things where you're like, somebody is watching you.
Yeah.
That bag that you've been carrying around, there's sounds coming from it. I think it's got a listening device.
They're constantly saving their rolls for no reason. They don't know the reason why.
Yes.
Why am I saving for this? Why?
Because you opened the tin of beans.
Yeah. The best roll... I'm sorry, go ahead, Jason.
No, go.
I said the best roll a GM could do is just say, roll me a 20.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And don't
strikes fear into them.
Just roll me a 20. Why? Just roll. What'd you get? I got a 12. Okay.
Oh, Vince has a devious side to him too.
Yeah, I like doing that too every once in a while. Just roll me 20. Okay. What'd you get? 15. All right. No problem. Anyway.
Yeah, I like to do the little thing behind the screen, where I'm just kind of sitting there while people are doing stuff and, what are you doing? Nothing. I'm just rolling something. Never mind. Nothing. Nothing happens.
Now we're blurring the line between the character and the player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun this weekend with one of my players found an intelligent weapon, so I was torturing him with that weapon. Like, I was talking to him, and he couldn't figure it out, and I wouldn't tell him why, so...
How did you do it? Did the voice like show up in his mind, or did he know where it was coming from?
No, he had no idea. I just kept handing him, like you were saying, handed little notes, like things were happening. Like, you hear this. You hear this. And he's like, I'm looking around, and everyone's like, what is he doing? And I was like, let him describe it. And he was just, my character's looking around for some voice, and he's, so, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And, I was having fun torturing him.
And everybody's going, right.
Back away from the berserker, the fighter.
Yeah.
The experienced players had figured it out what it was, but the newer player was just like, what?
What the heck?
Oh, you know what? You just reminded me of one other insanity that I forgot about. That was now I left the page, so I've lost it. It was the one that makes you incredibly strong for a minute.
Yes, that would be mania.
Yeah.
Just regular mania, not schizophrenia, but mania.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting one. So it says here, the insane character will shriek, rave, and behave in a violent manner, possessing a 1850, 1875, or 1800 strength, according to the state he or she is in. The maniac is unreasoning when spoken to, will possess great cunning, will desire to avoid or to do something appropriate. It's great. You could
It lasts
that could
for
be
a
really
long time, too.
Does it?
2 to 12
2
turns.
to 12 turns. Nice.
Yeah.
That would be great because that would be both a boon and a curse. Go ahead and visit it on them at the worst and the best times. But you can be a nice DM sometimes too. In a hopeless situation, suddenly your mania kicks in.
Or it kicks in when you're at the shop trying to bargain for that sword and you don't get your way.
Yeah.
Right. You can't have the sword because it's sticking out of my wife's stomach now.
Yeah, right. Nice.
Well, that's tragic.
Yeah, that was a little sad. I thought that even as I said it. We'll change it to my landlord.
Okay.
Wow.
Actually, the sword's free. Here you go. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap up Insanity for this week, at least part one of Insanity, because we can go on forever about Insanity. We'll follow up at a later time with a little more Insanity rules, as Jason has said. I think we'll entitle this episode, issue number 9, Insanity Rules.
Yes.
If only there were a game completely about insanity.
There is.
I know.
Okay, let's...
And that's one of my favorite games, too.
Yeah.
As the party enters the last space inside the cave, a treasure can be seen, so stretch as far as the eye can see. Beware as you have just entered the Dragon's Hoard.
Okay, folks, and that's going to bring us into the Dragon's Hoard this week, and we have something wonderful and special for you this week in the Dragon's Hoard, spelled H-O-A-R-D. The Well of Many Worlds.
Yes, the Well of Many Worlds. Very interesting magic item here. It's on page 155 of the DMG. And one of the right off in the description of this thing I thought was interesting. It looks same in appearance as a portable hole. So,
right.
So you're going to be like, awesome, I got a portable hole. This is the best.
What could possibly go wrong? And goes on the description that anything placed within it is immediately cast into another world, a parallel Earth, another dimension, maybe another plane.
Right.
And wherever you move this item, the Well of Many Worlds, it changes its interdimensional, interplanar location.
So basically, you've got a mouth to a wormhole here that is so complex in dimensions that whatever you do with it actually changes the nature of what it's connected to.
Yeah, if you want to look at it, from a scientific point of view, yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily mean to talk about the sci-fi side of things. I'm just saying that it's not the same if you get this Well of Many Worlds and you carry it to another place. It doesn't. Just because it sent you off to the the 9 hells the first time doesn't mean it'll send you back there the second time.
Right, unless you place it in the exact same place where you open up to that maybe particular plane or dimension.
Exactly.
Oh, this reminds me of those portals from that TV show Land of the Lost.
Yeah, it almost sounded like that.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, the way I would probably use this magic item is it also says
Two-way street.
it's a two-way street. Exactly. Something can come through. So you can open it up and Cthulhu could come out.
This is actually where it gets pretty cool because we talked a few issues back about a similar. It wasn't a magic item; it was classified as a monster, the Creeping Pit.
Right.
Yeah.
Which could eventually dump you into a different dimension, but it didn't send things back at you.
Right. This one can. It has the potential of that. And from my reading and description, it's really up to the DM how he wants this particular item to work. If there's things that come out from the other side, this also, I think, could be used as a great trap against like a strong monster or an NPC.
It could, but I don't think that I would let a paladin do it. And
No.
here's why. I mean, let's say you've got a paladin and a well of many worlds, and there's a demon, and the paladin knows by getting the demon to go in there, he'll get rid of the demon.
Mhm.
Right.
But he doesn't know where he's sending the demon. He
Right.
could have just sent him off to a dimension populated entirely by little old ladies and orphans. So that paladin could have just
That
damned
poor
him.
demon.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why I wouldn't let a paladin or anybody lawful good do it without thinking a little bit about the consequences of where am I
True.
sending this person or thing.
True, but I could also see it be used as that sort of thing, how to trap something like I don't know, like you said, a demon or some some other sort of monster.
Have you ever read Robert Asprin's Myth Adventures?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's what this immediately puts me in mind of because the demons in Myth Adventures, demon stands for Dimension Traveler.
Right.
And so a lot of the great stuff happens when somebody not only disappears into one of them, but suddenly appears from another dimension. So, I mean, I think it's a great plot device just for bringing in some otherworldly creature that...
Oh, yeah.
that otherworldly creature could be completely benign, but it's
Sure.
just because the difference between the dimensions is so great that the players get it wrong.
Yeah.
You could build an entire adventure just out of one well of many worlds.
Oh, yeah. I could definitely see that as a great plot device, like you said.
Now, from the other direction, if I were a player, you've mentioned that I might be a devious... excuse me. That I might be a devious DM.
Yes.
Well, that might be, but you are.
Well, as my DMs will tell you, I'm also a terribly devious player, always trying to set up stuff that they don't particularly like. It's like yeah, like in my other game, I think it was like one of the very first things that happened was everybody was fighting over some sort of creature, and I said, well, I've got a bag of holding. I'll just put over his head. The DM was not going to have it.
Oh, my gosh.
What I would be doing is collecting as many of these things like a well of many worlds and a portable hole as I could until we eventually ran into a creeping pit, throw everything in at once, and just sit back and wait for the DM to work out the physics.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I'd have you playing in my game because that's the type of stuff my players do to me too. No.
No, but it would be kind of fun to... actually, there's something I'd like to hear people's feedback on is what happens if you throw a well of many worlds into a creeping pit.
Yeah. What would happen if it get in contact with a sphere of annihilation?
Although, you know what? I just realized I'm getting kind of dangerously close to one of the more annoying people that has been kicked off of the Dragon's Foot forums recently for getting a little bit too silly with the rules, so maybe I wouldn't go there.
Well,
I mean, there's fun, and then there's just, come on, that's stupid.
Maybe
that's when the players say, now you're just being an ass.
Yeah, it could be that. So I still want to know what happens, but maybe I wouldn't do it.
Maybe it would become a creeping well.
Yeah, I think probably what would
Creeping
really
well.
happen...
Oh
Actually-
my god, a creeping well of many worlds?
Oh, no.
That could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, you know what? If you've ever wanted to think of a good way to get your players into the adventure Baba Yaga's hut, there'd be a good
Yes.
way to send them in.
Ooh, yeah, true.
Yeah, and I hope my players aren't listening because I've got to get them into that adventure at some point. Best adventure ever published in Dragon Magazine, in my opinion. But
We'll have to take a look at that then.
for a future issue, actually, there you go. For a future Blackstone's Vault, that's my request to you as the DJ is,
Okay.
could you review Baba Yaga's Dancing Hut?
I have it.
It's great.
Yes, it is. The tank.
Oh,
I remember the tank.
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll want to see how you would handle it, and maybe you want to answer Jason's question, what happens if we take the Well of Many Worlds and put it in a creeping pit and tell us what happens, make up your discovery and send it to us, rfistaff@gmail.com, and we'll be back right after this.
Blackstone's Vault.
Hello, and welcome again to another edition of Blackstone's Vault. I'm your host, Blackstone, and this is the second part of a three-part series of modules, the U series, and it's module U2, Danger at Dunwater by Dave J. Brown and Don Turnbull, and the recommended levels are 1 through 4. Okay, a little bit about this adventure. Taking up from module U1, the plot does get a little more complex, and it's probably best if I read it out of the appendix of Module U2. A colony of lizardmen had recently re-established possession of a lizardman stronghold previously abandoned many years before. The lizardmen are also known to have brought large quantities of weapons from a gang of smugglers, who were also, before the gang was routed, smuggling contraband goods to Saltmarsh. The members of the Saltmarsh Town Council are fearful of these developments, lest their own little fishing town is to be targeted of the aggression for which the lizardmen are obviously preparing. They approach a party of adventurers and ask for aid in ridding Saltmarsh of the menace. Unknown to the Town Council and to the adventurers, the lizardmen are not planning an attack on Saltmarsh. Rather, they are anxious to rid the area of the menace posed by an invading horde of Sahuagin. To this end, the lizardmen are negotiating with several other tribes of Mermen, Coalinth, and Locantha to gain allies in the struggle to come. The problems facing the lizardmen could possibly be amplified by internal dissent, though as yet this dissent has not come out into the open. Some of the lizardmen in the colony do not agree with the idea of allying with other races, even in the face of a Sahuagin threat, since they hold this in contrary to the teachings of their god Simuanya. These dissenters dare not oppose their chief yet, but if his authority and that of his senior officers were removed, they would make their feelings known in no uncertain manner. And that's the basic plot. There's also a reward of 5,000 gold pieces for the adventuring party if they find out what the lizardmen are up to. Alright, so that's the basic plot. NPCs in this, there's quite a few, and surprisingly enough, it's primarily lizardmen. You have the two factions. There's a pro-alliance faction and an anti-alliance faction. The pro-alliance faction is the chief, the sub-chief, his warriors, and the lizardman minister, who's the most influential to the chief. And if he's eliminated, it could definitely turn the tide for the anti-alliance faction. Now, the anti-alliance faction is basically the clerical, the shamans. We have the chief shaman and his senior shaman, all the other ones as well. Plus, all the females are on the anti-alliance faction. So you have those two sides vying for power in the lizardmen lair of who they should ally with, or should they ally with anybody at all. Some of the major encounters in this, basically you have an overland trek to the lizardman lair. On there's a random encounter table, some snakes, giant leeches, giant frogs, some crocodiles. So you have that encounter table, plus a preset one of a bullywug ambush of about 25 bullywugs. Now, the other way you can get to there is by sea. Now, kind of dovetailing to the previous adventure, Now, it is assumed that you're going to go ahead by land, but you could go by sea. In the module, they recommend that you hire some people out of the town to take some smaller boats, and you can go that way. It's not encouraged to use the Sea Ghost, even if you captured it. And it even goes the way that the DM should, make them run the ship aground or something like that. And I'll get into that a little bit later, how I handled that. And there are no encounters as written for a seaborne adventure on the way there. Now, as far as the lair is concerned, of course, there's hordes of lizardmen. You got the warriors, the shamans, the females. There's actually a funny little section there of two younglings, a male and a female youngling, that if they're about 4 years old, human age, and if they run into the adventuring party, they will kind of tag along with them, so they can kind of be annoying, but a little funny too. And you also have the minister, who does speak the common tongue and is rather intelligent. If you confront him, if you meet up with him, he will probably be more curious than scared of the adventuring party. You also have the temple to Semilania in there. There's a harem of lizardmen, women, the royal hatchery. There's some giant lizards. There's also an imprisoned Sahuagin, so that would maybe clue the PCs, if they run into that thing in the lair, what might actually be going on. And also the emissaries from the mermen, the Locantha, and the Coalinth. So that's pretty much the lair itself. Now the good stuff. It's got really good maps in here. There's also a list of pre-generated player characters. But what's most interesting about this is the complex plot that does evolve in this particular module. There is that possibility of an alliance with the humans, but it would be a tenuous one at most, because they don't really consider humans part of the fight against the Sahuagin. Now, also there's a little twist with Oceanus. If he is with the party, apparently the Coalinth and the Aquatic Elves do not get along at all. There's some animosity between the two races. So maybe if you can handle it well, if you learn how to speak Aquatic Elf or teach some common to Oceanus, could either be a help or hindrance. Also, there's many details. There's many details on what with the Lizardman Anti-Alliance faction wins out. Also, with the Lizardman Pro-Alliance faction wins, what would that happen there? If you do make peace with the Lizardmen, they will send emissaries back with the player character party back to Saltmarsh and negotiate with them, but they will demand reparations for any lizardmen, warriors, females, eggs, whatever. About 10 gold piece a pop right there. Now, if you refuse to pay, if the player characters refuse to pay, now there is in this one an option of how they can make amends with the lizardmen. Now there is a lair of oriental dragon nearby the lizardmen that is causing some trouble. A Panlung dragon who has charmed a giant crocodile with his special abilities. And if the player characters can, they will go to the lair of the dragon, defeat it and its crocodile companion if possible. And that would be as good as paying reparations to the lizardmen. Also, what if your party, and I'm sure this has happened to many, what if they just go in and hack and slash and destroy everything in the lair, in the lizardman lair? Well, there's even details in the concluding notes of what to do if that happens. So he could go on to Module U3, the final enemy. So, as I said, they've taken every consideration, every scenario into consideration here. So there's a lot for a DM to read, digest here, and so I don't think a DM would be lacking in any sort of material here. Now, some of the not so good stuff. The thing about the Sea Ghost, how the module is written to discourage the players from using the Sea Ghost. Well, you know what? If they want to use it, fine. Also, there's no water encounters. Well, that's easily done. You can make up your own waterborne encounter table in that case. And that's how I ran it. And as far as the other opinions here, how I ran the thing, the actions of the PCs will determine which faction wins. Basically, how far you get into the Lizardmen lair and which way you turn and who you fight is going to be pivotal in the final negotiations on who is going to be in alliance with humans or not. So, and how it happened in my group is when I DM'd it not too long ago, they went in, fought the giant lizards, went through, and went the right path basically to kill the head shaman and a couple of his leaders. So when it came to negotiations, it wasn't that bad. They still didn't want to pay the reparations, and they went on to fight in the Oriental Dragon Lair. But that's how it kind of plays out, and it could go the other way too. Also, if the PCs want to use the Sea Ghost, I would say, they can hire a crew for the Sea Ghost in Saltmarsh. I mean, that would work. Or, if you want to, maybe use some of those secondary skills in the DMG, I believe on page 12 of the DMG. Or you can use, is when you get at least the Waterborne, when you get on ship and you head towards there, you can use the Wilderness Survival Guide, page 44 through 46. So you can use that to help out there too if you wish. Also, the Fiend Folio will be needed because of the Bullywugs and the Oriental Dragon. Now, where can you find this module? You can find it on eBay in a wide range of prices, right from a starting bid of 99 cents up to a buy it now price of $24.95. And of course, you can check all your other conventions out there. But that's it in a nutshell about U2 Danger at Dunwater. This one can either be a hack and slash thing, or B, lots of role-playing opportunities. So it could be handled either way. Until then, I will cover the last module, the final enemy, in the next segment. So until then, this is Blackstone signing off and wishing all your hits are crits.
Well, guys, I think that's going to put another wrap on the show this week. Or the issue, I should say.
We were having so much fun.
Yeah. Jason?
We're so glad we had this time together.
I knew I was going to start with the singing.
Yeah, well, I can put some Happy Trails music in there if you want,
Dum-ba-dee-da-bum-ba.
Hey, we can't afford the rights.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't-
Okay, I'll stop it there.
Already we owe Bob Marley's estate. We owe Corey Rogers' estate. I don't think that I'm going to have to go out and get a second job for this.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, we're glad to have brought you another episode this week, and we'll be back on our regular schedule next week. So we're sorry about the delays. We just had some technical problems, and we're over that. So this is going to wrap up issue 9. I am your host, DM Vince. Keeping it original, keeping it old school.
Goodbye.
Night.
Roll for initiative.
Insanity rules.